For more info on the topic, focus, and guest of the episode, please check the description below. Please enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Inky Thoughts podcast. Today, we're continuing our newest sub-series, Reclaiming the Self. And it's sort of an odd one today because we're also continuing or going back into a previous topic we've had on the podcast, talking about, for lack of a better term, it might be a broader category than some people might realize, medical tattooing, and how that specifically, in a different way than tattoos might do it generally, but also in some similar ways, helps people heal after specific forms of physical trauma and mental trauma. But yeah, it's going to be quite interesting, and hopefully there'll be some new insights on this topic, and it won't all just be repeats, but we'll see what happens. But I've at least gotten a great guest on here, award-winning artist within this field, and a person that's also taught about this in their own part of the world over in the North American continental area. And before I ramble on too much and confuse everybody, please, Candice, would you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me on, first of all. I'm so excited to talk about this. My name's Candice Falcon, and I am from Vancouver, Canada. And I am a cosmetic and restorative tattoo artist. And recently I've kind of been starting to refer to it more as medical tattooing. And there's kind of like a bit of a debate about that because like what I do isn't always necessarily restoring. So, I mean, we can get into that too, but my business is Falcon Artistry. And I just opened a second location in Las Vegas. So I started out, of course, in Vancouver. I've been doing that for 9 years, and I wanted to expand and move into the States because I started to train other artists like in the methodology that I use. And a lot of them were American, and Vegas is, maybe more my style. We'll see how everything turns out. But and I've just always been an artist and a painter, and it's just been really cool to kind of see how everything has evolved through like all the different things you can do with tattooing. So I've just like it's really just kind of like evolved into so much more than I initially thought when I started on the cosmetic side. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've at least found your calling, so to speak. I would say so. Like you at least seem very passionate about it, I would argue. But I am curious though, and you sort of hinted at a little bit here. Did you always start out within this kind of tattooing, or did you tattoo, for lack of a better term, did you do regular tattooing beforehand?
I know it's funny. Yeah, I know. Like, I had a studio in Vancouver, and I had like 5 other artists at my studio at one point, and they were all regular tattoo artists, and we would like joke about that. We are like, what do we call it? Like
Oh,
artistic
yes.
tattoos as opposed to medical. Yeah, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny when I first got into tattooing, like all my friends assumed that I was going to do like what you think of when you think of a
Yeah.
tattoo artist. And I was like, no, I'm going to go into permanent makeup. And like initially I thought, oh, I'll do like, yeah, the traditional body art route of tattooing just because of my artistic like background, and I'm a
Yeah.
painter. And um, I, I was like, I don't know. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that much drawing, honestly, like the stress of like producing and stuff. And I had permanent makeup myself. I used to
Oh,
be a lifeguard, so being of fair complexion, if you don't have like makeup on, people would be like, "Oh, are you tired? Are you sick?" So it was nice to have that and to not kind of worry about it with swimming and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got into cosmetic initially, but my end goal was always to do nipple tattoos.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I went into it thinking like, okay, I need to gain some skills within the cosmetic realm to understand the skin aspect and
Yeah.
understand how it heals, because it's obviously like, yes, it's good to have some artistic knowledge, but there's the aspect of like the filter of skin,
Yeah.
healing over it, and color theory on that level.
Mm.
So, and then of course, like doing nipple tattoos is like often compromised tissue and other
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, other
I mean, even
concerns,
if it's
right?
not scarred over, I imagine there's still some stuff to consider with implants and the if there's been any skin grafts, depending on what kind of accident there might have been, or if it's covering scars and tissue of that kind. I imagine there's some different stuff to consider at least.
Yeah, yeah. So there's like with like breast reconstruction, at least, like there can be skin taken from other parts of the body. So like if they
Mm.
use like stomach skin to create a flap to like reconstruct the breast, you might be tattooing over stretch marks with like a scar through it, and then like the rest of the skin from the initial like breast area. So like half the nipple is on some skin, the other half is on a different piece of skin with a scar through it. And then also just other things that don't make the skin heal, I
Mm.
guess like typically. So if they
Yeah,
have like lymph removal or something like that, it'll affect the way it heals. So you'll even have healing different from one side to the other, depending
I can
on
imagine.
what
I mean,
type.
there's also
Yeah.
the aspect of like if they've been through some sort of radiation therapy and stuff like that because of
Oh
cancer.
yeah.
I imagine that can affect the healing process at least as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why like I consider it a two-step process.
Yeah.
So we tattoo the first session, see how it heals, and then in a follow-up
Mm.
we can like add more details if everything healed in well, or if things healed unevenly, like maybe one side healed, better than the other. We can always kind of add to it and adjust and stuff like that as well. And I know that the funny thing too is like when people think of nipple tattoos, they think, oh, it's for breast cancer. And
Yeah.
often that's kind of like the case. Like that's kind of the more sort of like yeah, like it's what people think of. But what I
Yeah.
realized when I first started doing it was I was getting inquiries from people that were like, "Oh, I'm reaching out and I'm kind of embarrassed. Like I haven't had breast cancer, but would you still tattoo my nipples for me?" So people that have had other surgeries like breast
Mm.
lifts or like anything where they've had to like graft the nipple back on,
Yeah.
where there's like scarring or tissue death,
Yeah.
and obviously like transgender like top surgery, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
um it turned out that a lot of the nipple tattooing I was doing wasn't necessarily for breast cancer.
Yeah.
So yeah, like then you have mixed tissues, so you have like the natural nipple tissue, which is like very like
Yeah.
thin, sensitive, stretchy, and it already has some color, and then you have like a hard, rubbery scar beside it, and then like the skin, and I'm like tattooing all of it to like round everything out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting because I was getting artists reaching out to me saying, I took a nipple course and
That
I
sounds that sounds so weird to be honest. I mean, I gotta stop you and say that I can't help but say there's some comedy to that. I took a nipple course. That sounds
well
like something
actually
you would ask for in a swingers lounge, like.
okay, actually I have a good like side story about that. My ex one time was like, "Oh, I showed my mom your nipples and she was really impressed."
Wait, wait. You gotta ask that, like, did I send you a nude and you just pull that out with your mom? Like, what's happening
Because I
here?
had a brochure at his house with pictures, and I was like, "Oh my god, if anybody overheard that, they'd be like, "Oh."
That'd be like, wow, but why? I mean, sure, be proud of who you're dating, but their mom, okay. No, but he could have more carefully said your work.
Yeah, I mean it's it was a good shock value, but yeah, no, like
Yeah,
that's a classic.
uh, I must say, unlike your work, good shock value. Your work seems to do more of the. I mean, with a joking way to get into that to some extent, which I also talked with Tanya Buxton about. In some cases, about reclaiming a sense of normality for some clients. But again, I love to juxtapose that with the other type of client you mentioned, which is about claiming a certain aspect of gender identity they want. And,
Yeah.
and reclaiming that sense, because that's not as much about reclaiming normality. That's more about claiming a sense of bodily autonomy and a feeling of the authentic self they are searching for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, a lot of what I deal with in my work is people, whether it's gender affirming or not, people
Mm,
are getting a surgery and expecting an outcome and
yeah.
not realizing that like they just need that kind of like whether it's a small sort of adjustment or tweak or addition that kind of gets them to
Mm,
like what they were hoping it would look like after the surgery.
mm.
And that doesn't mean that surgery like doesn't have good outcomes. It just means that if
Oh,
there's like a scar or if there's like something that can just be like
mm,
adjusted that isn't surgical, like this is why it goes so well hand in hand. Like adding pigmentation back to the skin is not something you can adjust surgically, or like just knowing that there's that
mm,
solution there and
yeah,
something that you can do about it actually has been really nice for surgeons to know about.
absolutely.
Because yeah, like I mean one of the surgeons that I worked with, he was like, this is amazing, like we're in the business of making scars, like if you're
Well,
able
I
to
wish I
do
could.
this.
I wish I could remember the name of the paper, but when I was attending a PhD, I also read some journals about medical tattooing and some research done with that. And one of the things you sort of hinted at there, but without necessarily knowing this bit, but it's quite interesting because just like with tattoos, a lot of people think a scar is just a scar, but there's often much more to it derived from the context and the backstory to that. So
Hmm.
that's why it can become such an important part of the healing process. Because yeah, the surgery might have gone well. You might have gotten something that was dangerous inside your body removed. You might have gotten some a skin graft because you were in an accident, whatever it is. But the scar can still remind you of the horrible thing that happened because it's derived from that context and that backstory. So coloring that up can be a part of reclaiming that sense of self and be a part of, not erasing, but getting over the part where you constantly look at the scar and think back to the traumatic thing that happened, you know?
Well, and I think what's interesting too is that people do get body art tattoos to
Yeah.
cover scars,
Yes.
and of course that's like a great solution. But not
Mm.
everybody wants to be covered in
No, of
large
course not.
visible art. And what's kind of funny about what I do is like I do tattoos for people that don't want to look like they have tattoos.
Yeah, that is quite
So
the interesting part, to be honest.
yeah, so it's like very funny to explain to people.
Mm.
Like when I tattoo scars, I'm custom mixing the ink to match with people's skin tone, and then I'm tattooing it so that it blends together and
Yeah.
and isn't this like physical reminder that they see all the time. And I think
Mm.
too, like it's because people have had lots of debates with me about the work I do, like how people should accept what's happened to them or accept their bodies or like you know just live with it or whatever. First of
Mm.
all, it's the person's decision what they want to do with their
Yeah.
body, which of course is you know
Well,
hand in
healing
hand
looks
with
different from person
tattoos
to
in
person,
general,
So,
for sure. And
and for some, much to the point I was making before, and you're making now, for some, a scar it might be all right to have a surgery scar or a scar from an accident, but for others, it becomes something that almost re-traumatizes them every time they see it. So getting it, you know, I think your terminology is camouflaged through tattooing,
Yeah.
can be a massive part of them healing and regaining this sense of a self and reconnecting with their body actually just as much as you just pointed out, as covering it with a art tattoo, as you as you said there, um, can also do that. For some, as you're pointing out, they don't want that. They might not be against tattoos, but they might not want them themselves. But this kind of tattooing can then help them gain the same result.
Well, and I think too, like I've done like collabs
Yeah.
with other tattoo artists where I tattoo the scar first and
Mm.
then they go and get body art done.
Oh, right,
But
yeah.
the tattoo artist that they go to next to do the art isn't restricted to cover exactly
Mm.
where the scar is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So maybe they tattoo and they leave some of the scar out and they're able to have more flexibility with the design
Mm.
because it's been covered. Like, I mean, whether I do it
Yeah.
first or second, it doesn't really matter, but they're able to have some flexibility where they're not like,
Mm.
okay, I have to make a design
Yeah,
that,
that
like, I
covers
mean, a
the
tummy
scar
tuck is a great
exactly. Yeah.
example. Yeah, like if it's a tummy tuck scar, it's like this straight scar in a very
Mm.
telltale spot, and it's like you see these tattoos. So like I've done that before where I've tattooed it and then they've done a design that doesn't necessarily cover the whole exact scar, but
Yeah.
you don't notice the scar coming out around it. And what's interesting too about some of the body art scar coverage is some people, like for example, if they're trying to cover self-harm on
Mm.
a visible place like on their arm or something, they don't want people like leaning in and being like, oh, let me see your tattoo,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's like they don't want attention brought to it. So that's another solution that camouflage is really helpful with, because it's blending it into your skin. And what a lot of my clients have told me too is the amount of people that ask about scars, it's very surprising to me.
It's a lot.
Like they'll be like,
It's
oh,
also
where'd you get
quite
that
personal
scar?
having a scar, you know.
Yeah, like and yeah, it's like it's actually a real common problem that people are getting asked all the time. Like sometimes it's the first thing someone will say to them.
Yeah.
And I think like, yeah, you're not necessarily sort of ignoring or erasing or whatever. You're choosing when and how you, if ever, decide to talk about a
Yeah.
scar. And when it's very visible and you see it all the time and you're dressing to accommodate it and you're
Yeah.
thinking about it and people are bringing it up, you're not like allowed,
Mm.
it's harder to kind of
No,
like, it's just
absolutely.
agitating.
But that's part of the term I'm using as a sociologist would be claiming, because that's the thing. People can lose a sense of self and a sense of bodily autonomy if they feel like, to avoid this attention that the scar draws, they have to dress differently than they normally would, or they have to hide it in certain times, so they might not go out swimming if they used to love that. So then covering it with this sort of camo tattoo, or indeed if you do it with a regular tattoo and it hides it well, that then gives them back this sense of bodily autonomy and a sense of self again, because they feel like, oh yeah, I don't have to hide now. People don't look at it in this weird way, because whether it's in their own head or it's actually there, the main thing is that they feel watched in a way and observed in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And
Totally.
removing that from their daily life can be so freeing and help them regain confidence and all that sort of stuff. It's a very worthwhile aspect of healing, which I mean, first clue should be that the medical journals and sociological and psychological journals that have talked about this, none of them go out and say, "Oh, I don't know if people should do this." Though they're all usually saying, "Hey, be careful, choose right," but this can actually be really beneficial. Like
Hmm.
I can't recall reading a single journal article from academia that was like, "No, you really should avoid getting scar cover ups or this camouflaging tattoos or anything like that." You know.
Well, I think the comments I usually got initially,
Yeah.
they kind of died off. Maybe people like whatever are more
Yeah.
afraid to say stuff to me. I'm just kidding. But yeah, what the comments I was getting were like more about my stretch mark work.
Mm.
So I do the same sort of thing for stretch marks. And then people were like, oh, why don't people just embrace their body? Or, why are they getting it covered up? And, or even just like vitiligo, like
Yeah.
pigmentation loss. Oh, it's this unique thing they have. Why are they covering it up? And like, they should embrace it. And like, at the end of the day, I like, my hair is a good example. I
Yeah.
choose to have my hair this way. I
Yeah.
choose the attention that it can bring, or whatever. Like, that's something I'm okay
Yeah.
with and I decided to do.
Well,
And I think like, people think like, yes, it's nice to, you know, come around to something and embrace and like be happy with
yeah.
who you are. But if there is a solution for something that really bothers you, and I mean really it's quite harmless and easy to take care of, then I'm there if you want it. I never tell
Yeah.
anybody they should get
Well, I was
anything.
about to make that blunt point as well, that like you're not out recruiting in the streets, you're not out
Yeah.
forcing people into your praxis, nor are you out there saying everyone should get this. I've not seen it. I mean, I research my guests. I've not seen a single post you've made. You, of course, you advertise your business, but you never advertise it with being like, no, no, aren't you ashamed of those stretch marks? No, you leave it open to people themselves that if they don't want that, if they don't feel comfortable with them, you offer them a solution. There would be a different story if you were like out there preaching, no, women should remove their stretch marks and we should all just look normal and like all clean and all. No, that's not what you're doing. You're offering something for people where it has had a negative impact on their sense of self, how their body
Well,
appears.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I've really made that a big part of. I mean, I'm really really big on the ethical aspect of tattooing,
Mm.
and I anytime I've trained anybody in what I do, or like even like my assistant and stuff like that, I'm like never upsell on somebody's insecurities. So
Yeah,
like if they come in with something and you see they have like stretch marks or something else, don't bring it up. Like even when somebody comes in to me with something that like I mean they
yeah.
send me a photo in advance, we have it all quoted, we know what we're going to do. I still at the beginning of every appointment say, show me what you're wanting done. I don't guess. I never am like, oh, were you wanting this done? Because what if that's
That's great.
not even something they noticed or cared about, right?
Well, I
So
mean,
it's a
not
big
to joke
part.
about it, but you don't want to turn into sort of a human mechanic that just keeps finding something else to fix in the vehicle, you know, like that. Because as you say, as you very beautifully put it there, almost poetically, that would be upselling somebody's insecurity. That would be sitting there being like like a dreadful stereotype that some therapists and psychologists once faced, where it was like, oh, aren't you gonna figure out something new that's wrong with them so you can keep getting them back in the chair and earning money on them? And it's the same principle here, that like it's very unethical if you did that. So of course you don't, if you want to run a good business that helps people, you know, because it's a horrible thing. Like they come in and want a nipple tattoo, and you're like, "Ooh, I see you have some stretch marks there. Should we also take?" And they might never pay attention to that. And then they're like,
Yeah.
"Really? Are they that visible?" And you end up sending them home feeling like shit. You know?
Well, and also like if somebody says to me, if they bring it up, if
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I also have these stretch marks," I'm like, "Well, I can help you with that," but I'll
Yeah, but
never
that's
point it
that's
out.
also all right. Again, the
Yeah,
difference is in how you do that. If you're saying I can help you with that, that's fine. I mean, you're there, you're offering them that, if and they brought it up. If you said, "Oh yeah, that is bad. Maybe you should get that fixed," then like that's a whole other ball game. You know, that's immediately needling at a possible insecurity. You know, that
well, actually, I was just like, I was thinking about this email I got, and I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure you can imagine the emails I get, but I got an email, and
sadly yes.
the title said, "Can you fix this?" And I opened the email, and it was just a picture of someone's boobs with
Wow.
no description. Like that
No,
was it.
sir, those seem fine.
Like yeah, and I literally was like, I am not guessing. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh, is it this or that? Like I was like, okay, like I that was like
Yeah.
that's literally just one of those memories where I'm just like, that is like a unique
Yeah,
situation.
that
So
is wild, to be honest. I
yeah,
mean,
so I had to
this
email
might
back and
show
be
that
like,
this might show my colors as sort of a male feminist, but I immediately thought of some disgruntled husband that forced their wife to let them take a picture, and just send it in to you. Like, can you fix this? Because it just seems to me like most women seem more reflexive about this sort of thing and would approach you saying, "Hey, I'm sad about this bit. Can you fix this specific thing?" And wait for you to ask for a picture.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I do say that like I can consult over photos and stuff like that and everything.
Uh,
And I guess it does go to show that to her she felt it was super obvious what needed to be done. But for me, I just was like, I'm not even gonna like, I don't know
no, but
what's going on.
just
So I
just
was like,
ask
you
a
know,
bit
send the
though,
email
because it just
back.
seems so like yeah. It
Yeah,
seems
I
so
was like,
it seems oddly clumsy for a woman that might be insecure about that sort of thing. But it can also just be, pure desperation that they feel like nobody's been able to help them. And that, I mean, I'm not gonna color them as some bad person, but it's just very clumsy to be like, "Hey, Candice, here's a picture of my tits. Can you fix them?" And you're like, "Not a plastic surgeon, if that's what you're asking. Don't know what's wrong outside of that. What fuck do you want?" You know?
well, I sent them an email back and I was like, "Hi, thanks for
Yeah.
sending a picture. Can you please like
I mean, yeah,
can you
I would
please
say that is common
specify?"
courtesy when somebody sends you a boob pic to thank them first. That's
Well, I mean, I do need photos, like even if
yeah,
somebody's like, "Oh, like," because people will describe something
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
we all picture something different, especially for
Well, yeah.
me, like
I mean,
people will
it's
be like,
also
"I have
with how
terrible
unique the human
scarring."
body is from person to person. It's difficult to picture exactly what's going on, like even if they
Well,
describe it.
yeah. And also you just kind of think about like based off of your experiences, like
Yeah,
it's such a relative experience like
yeah,
of what you would picture
absolutely.
when somebody says like somebody's like, I have really bad scarring, it's like the worst scarring ever, and I was like, well, I've seen some stuff, right? And then they sent it and I was like, oh, like I mean,
I would
not
imagine.
to not to invalidate how you
No.
feel or what you're going through, but like I needed to see that picture because like I would have assumed there was like
You,
more
you
that I
you
needed
also
to.
need to, like any medical professional would also need to do, or any tattoo artist for that matter. You need to assess what's actually going on,
Yeah.
sizes, all that stuff. And in your case, probably also the severity of any trauma that might be in the area, or you know whatever's going on. And that's very, and as you very brilliantly point out, that it's very difficult to do based on people's assumption, based on their own experiences, because we all extrapolate stuff based on what we've seen in our lifetimes. That's why experts often get closer to the truth, in the same case with you, because you've seen way more. They might have seen their own scars and some of the others, and they might have been around Google a bit. You've actually worked with it, very close proximity, and can have a much better chance, at gauging what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean like I do say like nothing's too small because if it bothers you and it's affecting how you live your life, then, you know, why don't we just do this and you can move on, and like I mean a lot of people I tattoo them, I never see them again, you know, they're happy. It's sometimes hard to get healed photos that way, but like yeah, it's not even about like the severity or like, you know, justifying needing it or anything like that. It just there's other aspects too, like whether someone's a good candidate or even just the timing, you know, if the skin's even ready to be tattooed or how things are looking,
Yeah.
maybe they should do laser first and then come. So
Mm.
yeah, it's just it is better to have like yeah, more of an in-depth consult about it for sure.
Absolutely. Also, a different aspect that I also think I saw you talking about, that I also talked with Tanya Buxton about, regarding the timing aspect of it. People also need to be ready for that part of the healing process. They need to reach that stage, because some people, at least in her experience at the time when I spoke with her, some women, especially when she was talking mainly about mastectomy tattoos at the time, they hope that that's just going to be the magic step that brings them over the hurdle, and now they're healed and all themselves again. No, that's the end. It's sort of like tying a bow on the present here. Like they need to have started the healing first, and then the tattoo will help. It'll assist. It'll help possibly push them over that last hurdle, and they will feel more like themselves again. But it's not a magical solution. I mean, it can look like magic with how incredible the work is sometimes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, yeah, she does amazing work. I always am blown
Oh,
away by
absolutely. Well, yeah.
her art. Yeah, totally.
I mean, your own work is incredible too, but I hope you get my point here. Like the healing process mentally needs to have been started as well because it helps. It doesn't do it for you, you know. So nobody
Yeah.
can come in and be like, oh yeah, if I get this tattoo, then I'll heal. You know.
Yeah, well, and I think too, what I've talked to people about more often than not during the appointment too is they're like, "Oh, I kind of held off for a while and I thought,
Mm,
maybe this is like vanity and I've never had a tattoo." A lot of people it is their first tattoo. And and I'm like, you're not vain for wanting something back that you had previously. And even if it is for purposes that have nothing to do with cancer, like just do this for yourself. And I think too, like, um you know women going through breast cancer, and I know like obviously like men go through breast cancer too, but obviously
mm,
it's quite proportionately women.
yeah.
They are just so commonly worried about being a burden and going through all this, and used to taking care of so much. And it is really nice to help people get through that mental hurdle of doing
Mm,
that for yourself. And so I think that like there's really some conversations that help wrap up things and help people view themselves differently. Obviously, they will no matter what with what they've been through and how they look now, but also just like the aspect of like viewing your life differently too. A lot of people have
mm.
given me more perspective where they're like, yeah, I just don't care about certain stuff anymore. Life's short and you go through something, and like there's really big things to focus on, and there's other stuff that just doesn't matter. So it's yeah,
Uh,
it is really inspiring to be around people, and but
Absolutely.
also to be able to share and like help people see themselves more than just the tattoo, like they're worth spending time on themselves.
Absolutely. But I think that's also the thing that there's this social construction of like, with this kind of tattooing or with, in quotation marks, regular kind of tattooing, that it's all vanity and why are we doing this? And it's just trying to be like, but the thing is, for people that really like it and get it, it's not vanity as such. And why wouldn't vanity also be all right? We have one go at this world, at least from my ontological perspective. Um, Doing stuff that makes you feel more in line with how you wish to embody yourself, stuff that, to put it somewhat simpler, makes what's in here align with what's out here. That's
Yeah.
healthy. It makes you feel more confident in yourself. It also makes you feel more reassured of who you are. And for some people, like with your clients, it could be about regaining a sense of normal, at least what they feel is normal to their own body. And for others, it could be regaining a sense of normal in a different sense. For example, out of a traumatic event, or as we've mentioned a lot, breast cancer survivors that have a mastectomy done and then put implants. For them, it might be seem more normal or feel more normal to them at least to have tattooed nipples on the breast on the after the augmentation, because those they might feel like just have two orbs that seem almost alien in a sense, you know. Whereas for others, the right choice is to get something artistic done over the
Mhm.
stars or just over the augmentations. People are different, and I think that's one of the beautiful things in how you talk about it. You don't say this is the right choice. You just say, "Hey, I do this, and this can help. So if this is what you feel will help you, come on, come along." You're not out there. I've at least not seen it. If you are, you have a secret account where you do that, I would say. But I haven't seen you slam others that might go the more artistic route. You know, you're just offering the other kind of treatment, so to speak, that helps people that don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I love tattoos and yeah, but I think it's just one of the big reasons why
Yeah.
I talk about this and try to spread awareness is so that
Yeah.
people can see the other opportunities with tattooing.
Mhm.
And like there's so many amazing realism artists in tattooing
Mm.
doing these like crazy portraits and stuff like that. And it's kind of weird like doing like I do realism, but
Yeah.
like I'm using the
Very
body with
specific.
it. Yeah, like so for example, I did a live tattoo demo on
Mm.
syndactyly, which was like webbed toes.
Yeah.
So the toes were like conjoined and
Yeah.
I tattooed them to make them look like they were separated.
Oh wow.
And so I did like the demo and I got the person to like stand on her tiptoes and like and see what the bones look like through the skin. And it really is like the epitome of a moving canvas in the sense of like how can I create the
It's
appearance
very
of.
minute with a lot of nerves and joints and all of this sort of stuff during the toes there. So I imagine that does take quite some planning.
Yeah, it was it was interesting to do and they give you like a time limit too.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so I was kind of like, oh,
That'll be a
but
new
yeah.
kind of TV show. Like
Yeah, it was really like yeah, it's just a cool experience and I think like
mm,
especially in permanent makeup, people get
yeah.
really hung up on like the concept of like a service, like oh, like brows, eyeliner, lips, and then like they learn, they learn nipples, they learn camouflage, whatever. But when you start with an artistic foundation and you understand like I mean one of the things I think is key with being a good artist is like the art of observation, like seeing what makes something look like itself is like noticing all of those like unique or unusual or even like unattractive features that make something look real. If you're just drawing kind of like what you think something should look like or whatever, it always just looks a little bit off because you're
That
not
is very real. Like, is it?
you're not like featuring what you're actually seeing.
No, I get
And
it.
so like if you're just drawing like a line between two toes and you're not, getting like the shadows and like
Mm.
the knuckles and
People
you're not.
over exaggerate the hunt for perfection, so to speak, when they don't know how to, make it real. That's also involving some of the imperfections. You know?
And they're not using the body as
Yeah.
reference, using the other toes as reference that would match to make it look
Yeah.
like the rest of the foot instead of just being like, oh, these should be separated and like doing a line. So I think like
I mean,
um
that would be scamming people pretty fucking grimly if they're like, can you separate my toes? Yeah, sure.
I mean, I've seen it done where they're like, "Oh, wow." And I'm like, "Oh, that could have been." I mean, I'm picky about
Uh,
it and I think that's important
okay.
as an artist to be like, "Okay, how can we always do things better?" And
Yeah.
but yeah, I think like really understanding like how important observation and reference is like really the key to making something look
Yeah.
realistic. And yeah, there's the aspect of like using a nipple as reference for a nipple tattoo, but then for
Yeah.
something like that where you're tattooing a piece of the body to look like the rest of the body,
Mm.
using the body as reference. I don't know, it's kind of it's a challenge and it's always kind of custom and
Absolutely.
different, which is why I really enjoy it.
I mean, I get why, but I did get a curious question there when you said that. Have you had people come in, specifically with nipple tattoos in this case, and like have a picture of their own nipples prior to losing them, and then using that as a reference? Or how does it usually go?
Yeah, well, it's funny because like most of my clients are like, I don't want them to look like before. They're like, I want better. So
I mean,
it is
while
kind
you're
of
there,
funny.
why not?
Yeah. They're like, I've had a couple kids, like they weren't looking that great, whatever.
Oh,
Um and then some people like but I
no
do tell
shame in
people
that.
like if they're reaching out before they've had any surgeries, I say take
Mm.
some pictures so you have them and we can use them
Yeah,
as
yeah.
like a
So in case,
guide.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do have a binder that people can look through with reference photos. So they can literally like pick through a binder of nipples and be like, oh, I like, the texture
Yeah.
and shape of this one, but I want coloring more like this. And some people just come in and they're like, whatever you think would look good for me. And my qualifying question is usually I just start with, and of course, obviously it depends on the skin tone, but like
Mm.
for fairer skin tones, I guess, the question is like, okay, so what do you think about pink in the nipple? And people have strong opinions. Like they're either like, yes,
Wow.
I want like really pink or whatever, or they're like, oh, like, maybe like a little bit or whatever. And then some people are like, no pink, I don't want any pink or whatever. So it's funny to kind of like just get that as a bit of a starting idea. But I actually did heart-shaped nipples
Oh,
recently and they were so fun. It was so exciting to
but,
do.
but I think that's another beautiful thing of like it's not exactly the artistic kind of tattooing, but it is also people gaining some autonomy. Like they're getting the best out of a, for lack of a better term, bad situation by saying, you know what, I'm gonna get my nipples restored through tattooing. I'll have some fun with it. I want heart-shaped nipples, or I want this color, or I want, I think that's great, honestly. Like I'm biased as a sociologist. I always love when people explore their identity and find something that's better for their own authentic sense of self, you know. But that is quite great because that doing that in that process, at least looking at it from a psychological and sociological perspective, means that they also feel more part of the process. It feels less like they just go in, to a consultation. You say, "Oh yeah, your breasts are like that. We'll give you these nibbles. See you Monday." It feels way more, like they are part of this and part of reshaping that part of themselves to be more in line with how they see themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've tattooed people's natural nipples to have hearts as well.
Oh, nice.
Um yeah, so I mean like there's not really like there's some limitations in the sense of like sizing and stuff like that, depending on what people are
Yeah.
wanting or whatever. But yeah, like it's super fun to do. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm kind of in a bit of a fringe situation
Yeah.
with the type of work I do
Yes.
because I work a lot with plastic surgeons
Yeah.
and I speak at conventions and I
Might have
and
to
I
connect you with
connect.
my guy John Brochus down in Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've talked to him and
He's great.
I'm hoping to meet him soon in person. Yeah. Well, and yeah, like I mean that's actually like such a great example. He
Mm.
is um just being himself. He's
Oh
just like
yes.
being his authentic self. And I'm just saying that like having not met him, but just through how he presents himself.
Yeah.
um there's obviously that sort of like perception of like what you should look like
Yeah.
to be like professional, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting with me is like I wanted to dye my hair and I was like, well, what if I look like this and then surgeons don't take me seriously or think that I'm professional
Yeah.
because of the way I look? And then I was like, okay, but I'm also a tattoo artist. So,
Plus, professionalism is a social construct, anyways. It's all fucking male patriarchal bullshit, to be honest, that just makes people like be like, "Oh yeah, can you look more conservative? Because else I'm not gonna take you seriously." Like it's bullshit. Like there's nothing that happens to your cognitive ability to do your amazing work from you having green hair or your back tattoo or your finger tattoos. None of that makes your IQ slip a few points or makes your hands no longer work or anything like that. The main thing it can do, which I also talked to John about when he was on my podcast, the main thing it might do is that it makes you feel more like yourself, which makes you more confident, which is proven to make you better at whatever kind of work you do. Because when you feel more yourself and you feel more confident, you feel way more open to handle difficult situations or lots of tasks or be considerate and empathetical to other people's situations, all this stuff. Like the list goes on. So it's actually an asset when you want to look like yourself. It also, I imagine, similar to John, makes a lot of your clients feel more comfortable.
Well, initially I thought, is this going to affect my type of clientele? Like
Yeah.
our older, like more nervous clientele that haven't had a
Yeah.
tattoo before gonna look at me and say like, oh, if she thinks green hair looks good, like, can I trust her with my face? Or you know what I mean?
Gonna give
Like,
me purple
oh, she,
nipples.
yeah, like, maybe she only does like these crazy
Green.
things. And it's funny because actually one of my clients,
Yeah.
I still laugh about this. I did her brows, and I'm kind of known as like the blonde brow specialist because obviously people that are getting brows done,
Mm.
like they
Oh,
picture like they're big, dark, whatever, and blondes are like really nervous about it. They're like, "Okay, I don't want it to look like I'm wearing makeup." And I'm like, some people just have brows all the time because when you're blonde and and you're putting on your brows, it's like, oh, I'm wearing makeup because I have brows on. And so I always am like, okay, like my brows are tattooed, so
no.
I'm like, it can be really soft, it can be really natural. And so I was talking to this blonde client, and she's like, Candice, just keep it like really natural, like really subtle. She's like, I'm not all look at me like you are. And I was like, that is so funny. Like I told my friends and they were like
Um,
offended on my behalf. And I was like, no, that's very funny to me. Like
it is quite
I'm
funny.
like,
It's also funny
yeah.
because the irony is, and I've tried to explain this to people when I was interviewing for Danish TV. I've tried to explain it in this podcast before. I've tried to explain it through articles. The irony is, most tattooed people, despite how look at me it can seem to other people and people with fun hair colors and that, it's not about that. It's about us liking how we look. It's not about drawing attention. That's a byproduct that people sometimes like and sometimes they don't like. And that can change day to day or mood to mood, and all that stuff. But the main goal is never to be like, don't imagine you got green hair because you're like, you know what? I want to draw attention.
Well, I mean, I don't mind attention, but I
No, but
think I think I think like I mean, I joke about it. I'm like, it's good to have a strong personal brand. I have my business brand, and then I'm like, I have my personal brand. But yeah, I think what happened with my hair was like I started out with kind of your typical,
yeah.
I call it like, like basic
Well,
bitch hair. Like I was like, oh, I'll start with like like a lighter pink or like, purple and
we
whatever.
can't
And like
all be like me and naturally have three different colors of hair on your head.
yeah,
Like
people
I'm
pay for
strawberry
that.
blonde, fully blonde, and ginger. Like this, no hair dye, no nothing. It's just three different colors of hair. And people have asked me before, do you dye in three different colors? I'm like, nope, not dyed once. And now some of the beards coming in gray, so I have four colors now. It's gonna be exciting. But
Some streaks.
on the note of cosmetics, actually, because I did think about this while you were talking about it. I think it's one of the more misunderstood kinds of tattooing. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, so you're gonna have like full on lipstick or full on eyeliner tattooed on you. And some might do that. But most cosmetic tattooing is way more subtle than that. And also, I mean, I've got was reminded of this by one of your videos about some lip tattooing and stuff like that. It's also way more complex in a sense because it's got to be subtle. It's got to do more than it looks to do, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean there's definitely what's unique about cosmetic tattooing, like especially on the face, is like there's a lot of color theory involved, and there's a lot of technique aspects with like implantation where you want the appearance to be more like natural and
Yeah.
like faded looking so that it like blends with the skin. And then because of that, where it's kind of like you have the filter of the skin growing over the tattoo, like there's just considerations with like that's why you're seeing some of these like blue or purple or
Mm.
whatever brow colors where like the inks, they were still kind of figuring out the formulations where it would be like applicable for permanent makeup, where it wasn't like
Yeah.
such intense ink as like solid. You're not tattooing it the same way you would
No,
if you're
no.
trying to like do like pull a hard line with
Mhm.
body art. But yeah, like I mean a lot of the cosmetic work I do is has applications with medical tattooing
Yeah.
and restorative work. So like there's gender affirming aspects of it with like
Mhm.
people that are like, "Oh, I'm trying to teach myself makeup," and like I and yeah, I mean whatever, putting makeup on every day is annoying.
Yeah.
I like putting on makeup for fun. So I
Yeah.
always joke like when I put on makeup, if I'm gonna go out or whatever, I do full drag. I get to do like big
Yeah.
makeup and everything. And actually, like I didn't have my lashes today, so you're only getting half my drag. But I yeah, like I do it because I enjoy it, but I don't want to feel like I have to wear makeup all the
Yeah.
time. And so like my brows, eyeliner, and lips are all tattooed. I have makeup over
Mm.
my eyeliner, but yeah, my lips and brows you can see. But yeah, like there's aspects of it too. Like if I've tattooed people that have had like facial burns where
Oh, yes.
like their brows are gone and like I've tattooed the skin tone back and then
Yeah.
created the brow.
Or done
Or
hair
like
pigmentations and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, and like creating symmetry and adding
yeah.
color back in and like and kind of like sculpting through
Yeah.
shading. And yeah, there definitely is a real art to it. And
But that's what I mean. Like, it's way more complex. Like, a lot of people, a lot of lay people out there just commonsensically think, oh, so we get permanent makeup done, then you really need to commit to one kind of lipstick, for example. That's the one you'll often hear. But most people I've seen do that kind of stuff. Like, some might do that. And there are versions that some are really happy about it. But most cosmetic tattooing I've seen when done well is way more about accentuating what's there and adding a sense of some makeup but not overpowering it. So like it doesn't make you unable to actually put on other makeup. It doesn't do anything. And a lot of times it's about almost in a sense becomes similar to cosmetic surgery in a way, because it could be about like, oh, some people may think their lips seem really like thin or not that puffy or anything like that, and they get some tattooing in the right places and it sort of accentuates some of the curvature of the lip and stuff like that.
yeah, and actually I had that conversation last night with somebody where they had some asymmetry. I mean, we all have asymmetry. And even just like the way we talk, we don't talk symmetrically, which I've noticed the more interviews I do. I'm like, oh, I have this weird side of the side of the mouth thing I do. But yeah, like we all have asymmetry, and
Yeah.
there's things you can do through tattoo where like yeah, you enhance some things, you downplay others, and you mix with like maybe some color they already have,
Yeah.
and you just shape and define features that yeah, they have already. And I said to somebody talking about lips, like she was like, you know like how can I adjust this, whatever. And what you can do is you can go off their natural shape, and then if they want to balance it further, they can add filler or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
then when the filler is gone, they still have that tattoo. So
Mm.
like there's it, tattooing, like the type of work that I do really goes hand in hand with so many different applications and like
I'd say, yeah.
aesthetics and surgical and therapeutic, and like there's so many different things. So I'm always saying to people like, just ask me, is this something I can do? And I really do work hard to understand people in related fields. I
Yeah.
don't advise on things I don't do, but I really make an effort to reach out and ask people about things, especially things that people ask me that I can't help them with. So,
Yeah.
like, you know, if somebody's always kind of coming to me with something like, oh, thank God I found you. I've been looking everywhere and like, and now, like, can you help me? And I'm like, oh, that's not something I do. At least I've made
Yeah.
a connection with somebody that does do that, and I can refer them out, because that's still, in my opinion, part of my job, to
Well, I
help
mean,
people even if it's not me.
it goes a great step towards what you were initially also talking about, which is this whole idea of what this sub-series is about with reclaiming the self, that you are one step in helping uh, this process, whether it's healing physical trauma or medical trauma or anything like that, or whether it's just, could be basic aging or something else that's going on where they just want to feel more like their authentic self. And sometimes the answer isn't a massive sleeve or back piece. Sometimes the answer is permanent makeup, for example, or other forms of cosmetic tattooing or anything like that. And I think it's worth pointing an attention to because I think it gets a bad rap at times. Whereas I think you can't dislike that if you like tattoos, regular tattoos in quotation marks again, because the thing is, it's all about changing the appearance to fit what's in here, no matter the reasoning behind it. There can be lots of different contexts and reasons and backstories that makes you go for one thing over the other or anything like that, and your own convictions about it and how you want to look, all that plays into it. There's so many variables to it. But ultimately, from a sociological perspective, it's all similar in that one important aspect that is changing the appearance to match what's in here.
Well, I mean, I also find it funny that a lot of the people I tattoo, it's their first tattoo and they're getting it on their face.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that irony doesn't slip me either most of the time. That it is quite funny when you see somebody that has no tattoos and they're like, now I've met a person once that was like, I don't have tattoos, but they just previously in the conversation talked about how they got their permanent makeup done, and I was like, so you do have tattoos,
Yeah.
you actually have face
Well,
tattoos.
and there's a lot of misconceptions that
Yeah,
unfortunately are passed through people that are like learning quickly and then
yeah.
like turning around and teaching other people, and there's a lot of lack of regulation, and that's like a whole other issue depending on where you live and stuff like
That would be
that.
a whole other episode on its own.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you want to rant. But yeah, like there's a lot of misinformation where people that are performing these services are saying that they're like semi-permanent or
Yeah,
like not a tattoo.
yeah.
And that's so harmful
Both
because
are
people
wrong.
are, yeah, and people are getting them and saying that, and then yeah, like they're being taught that, they're advertising it that way, people are getting it done assuming it's just going to go away or disappear, and they're like coming to me being like, yeah, it's been years and it's super dark and it's still here, and I'm like, yeah, it's a tattoo. And yeah, it's like I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm so far the other way that
Yeah.
like I have all these forms. Everybody's like very informed before they even book with me. Like you can't even book with me without reading all of my policies and like all
Yeah.
like what it entails, the aftercare, everything, so that you really understand what it is, and also you have good timing for like what you have coming up in your life and everything. And I've also like had a consult first before I even send them that. Everybody gets the same amount of information so that I don't go, oh wait, did I remember to tell them this or that?
Yeah.
And then they go into it like understanding, and I'm even like I kind of like to manage expectations almost to the point where like it's a surprise if it's done super well and we don't need any follow-up appointments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been fortunate that a lot of my
Rather
results,
undersell the end result and have it
yeah,
be really great than be like, no, no, you're never gonna need a touch up. You're never gonna like it's all I've always been more a fan of the whole idea of like, hey, rather sell them what you know you can promise. And if it
yeah.
goes even better than that, fantastic.
Well, yeah, and I think too, like with the type of things I work on, it's just
Yeah.
very hard to predict the skin and the area and the healing and
Yeah.
everything. and then people have usually been through some stuff prior. So I'm just kind of like, okay, like this is how it works. And they really appreciate that. And it's
Yeah.
weird because I think people feel like they need to make these big promises in order to like secure the client. And I say to people, I'm like, I really can't give you, like, they go, how many sessions am I going to need? I'm like, I don't know until we do one session and then I see how well that went, and then I can kind of start to gauge. And like, people end up booking knowing that, and it's less stressful for me as like an artist, and it's also less stressful for them because they're not going into it being
Yeah.
surprised or ambushed by anything. And I think, yeah, like it's just easier to be upfront with people, and then they can make an educated decision based off of what they actually feel is good and what works for them.
Absolutely. Well, on
Seems
that note,
obvious.
because I've kept you for a full hour now as well, and I've loved this interview as well. But on that note, I always loved, and we've had quite a light-hearted conversation, so it seems silly to say, but I always love to round off on a on a lighter note. This has been quite, you know, personal, especially for people that have been through it. It is a sensitive topic to some extent. So, on a lighter note, I was wondering, what's your best client story from this year? What's been the best experience with a client this year?
Oh, hmm. Oh my goodness. I think I'm so type A and I'm so literal that these like questions really like, I'm like, okay, I have to literally think of the exact best person, the exact best, situation or whatever. I think
Yeah.
um I think one of my favorite
Mm.
stories is I did a breast reduction tattoo for a woman. Like, she had like a reduction and a lift and she had scars, and she just wanted to add more like pigmentation to her nipples, and I like defined it, made them look more like they were sticking out more 3D, whatever. And when I was done, she looked in the mirror and she was like, oh, these look so good. I'm so mad I'm single. She's like, no one's gonna see these. And this was like, this was
That's a
when I
good
was like,
advertisement, to be honest.
yeah. Well, and this story, to be fair, isn't from this year, but I just love this story so
No,
much.
this is
This was
good.
when I had my studio and I had all the artists in there and everything. And I purposely had designed my room, obviously, to be private, but the walls didn't
Yeah, yeah,
go up to the ceiling because I still like to talk to everybody over the walls and everything. We had a very community vibe in there. And so they could like hear her, and she was like, everybody get in here and look at these tits. And I was
what
like,
an
oh my god.
endorsement of the product. I must say.
Yeah. And yeah, we were like all laughing, and she's like, I want to walk out of here shirtless. And I was like, well, you legally can,
Wow.
because in
I mean,
in Vancouver,
it's a fun
you
story, but it's
can.
also, yeah, but it's a fun story, but it's also a great proof of what I've been arguing together with you in this episode, that it can give people such a sense of being themselves again and such a boost of confidence that they say stuff like that. They feel that great about themselves. They're like, you know what? I'm leaving the jacket here. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was
Oh
pretty
man.
funny. I was like, oh my god, that's, yeah, I'll never forget it,
That would
obviously.
have been in the
And
news. Like, woman walks home naked after tattoo.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of my work, and like, I'm sure this has come up before, a lot of my work gets censored on social media.
Yeah, of course.
Even if it's like fully a tattoo, there's no like
No.
actual nipple tissue there. So yeah,
I
it is
mean,
hard to advertise,
I
work
could go
like
into a
that.
full
So
rant about the stupidity of censorship of the human body of any variety, but yeah, that's a whole rant I could go into for hours, and we would need 3 more episodes for that. So before I do that, I want to first thank you so much, Candice, for being on here. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and nerding out about this type of tattooing with you. And please, 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 before we say goodbye to people, will you let them know where they can learn more about you and what you do?
sure, yeah. Yeah, so my business is Falcon Artistry, And so that's on Instagram and Facebook, and I have TikTok, but like I don't know. Not great with
I'll link
social
what I
media.
can below at least.
Yeah, and and then I do training and stuff as well. So on my website, it's falconartistry.com. So yeah, I love to connect with people. I love to talk and yeah, like hear people's stories, connect with other artists. So like I'm so grateful that you had me on here, even just
Oh,
to
thank you
spread
so
more
much.
awareness about options with tattoo and what's possible. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Thank you again.
Well, you're very welcome. And to anybody listening or watching, we hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this revisit to medical tattooing, a thing we haven't talked about on the podcast since I had the lovely Tanya Buxton on here. And it was nice to revisit it with Candice and focus a bit more on how tattoos help in assisting in the healing process after all sorts of different kinds of trauma and surgery and stuff like that, and how it's an option for those that don't necessarily identify with being a tattooed person as well, because there's this sort of thing called camouflaging, as Candace talked about, where you try to get back to the norm rather than covering up scars and anything like that, with something more artistic, which we also covered a little bit with Tanya, but I think we got more into here. Next time, we're staying somewhat within the medical field, so to speak, as I'm talking to the awesome male nurse, Jessie Barnby, who sort of continues along the lines of what we originally talked with John Brochus, the awesome surgeon from Las Vegas, about, with what it's like to work in the medical field as a heavily tattooed person and how that affects people's social interactions with you. Lastly, before I leave you till next time, do keep in mind that I may soon start every other month only publishing one episode, and it's to make room for other projects I have going on right now, which require more of my attention. But please stay tuned for next time, and I will see you around.